Oh. What the heck is going on, all you Cthulhus, Dagons, and Yog-Sothoths? Mark of Cardivox Academy here, and today we're checking out A Wake In Providence, the horror of the old gods. I haven't listened to A Wake In Providence in a long time, so I'm kind of excited to see what this is all about. I do know that what I've heard of Adam Mercer, their vocalist, pretty rad dude, pretty good vocalist. I'm excited to sort of peel apart the sounds he makes. I found some videos of him doing raw tracks, one of which is very old, one of which is a little bit more recent, that we will use to inform us. So I'm excited. Now, if you're new to the channel, again, my name is Mark. I am a vocal coach specializing in metal vocals. So teaching people how to make all these, types of vocals easily, healthfully, safely. I'm going to leave that in. All that good stuff. And I'm a metal vocalist myself. I'm in a metal band called Kardashev. We released an album through Metal Blade Records. That was pretty dope. And so we're going to take the reaction format, break it down, make it educational as much as we can. I'll tell you what the vocalist is doing, or if I'm not too sure, or I would approach it a different way, I'll give you my best guess. If you like the content, like, share, subscribe, means a lot. Feel free to check us out on Patreon. We have a lot of cool events, people from all around the globe, and it's a good time. It's a good time. We have a very active Discord server through our Patreon, so fun place to hang. That's all I really have for you. I've only got a little bit to film this video today, between all the other stuff I'm doing. Playing video games. What? So let's go ahead. Let's get started. Let's check out A Wake In Providence, the horror of the old ones. Old gods. The horror of the old gods. Shit, let me pull up the video. Yes, the horror of the old gods. Let's go. Haha, we got it in the 40 set. We got it in the 40 range. If you know, you know. Okay, so let's talk some vocals here. Pretty straightforward stuff. Not necessarily easy or like beginner stuff. Easy for some people, right? Not easy for others. But we have some really solid lows, some really solid mids, and some really good high fry sounding vocals here. So he's using a technique that a lot of times people will put like purely into the false chord camp, or they'll say it's a fry sound because it doesn't have that like really open rattly of like a false chord vocal, that really loose breathy sound, but it also doesn't have that tight together crackly vocal fold sound either that we get from a fry scream. You definitely hear that on the high vocals. So actually, we're going to take a quick segue here to talk about what he's doing. So this is a lot more common of a technique in metal vocals than I hear a lot of people talk about. But it's extremely common, and it's, in my opinion, it's easy to build it on a false chord basis, right? But it has this sort of sound to it. Now, we don't want to use our vocal folds when we go for the actual scream or the actual distortion, but we can kind of hear it. And I actually queued it up because I knew I wanted to talk about this. We can kind of hear it in this video he put up. Now, this is an old video. This is from 2015. So surely he looks a lot younger. Surely his technique has evolved and changed over time, but you can hear it here pretty well. So I'll let you see what I mean.
It'll come out like, but the more you push it, it's like,
now I want to point out there that there was not a lot of effort, right? This is and so for that reason, I would probably reword his phrasing from push a little bit, and I'll explain what I mean. But we had this like we had that development of tone. This is not generally something that I would want people to start off with right off the bat. Usually there's like a false chord bass I want, or they should have some sort of vocal bass. Like even if they come to me with a fry bass that they've been using for a long time, that just, they've got a little bit of familiarity with their voice. But essentially what's happening is my arytenoids are coming together and they're rattling around. The epiglottis, I talked about this in my last video, I think. I talk about it a lot because I hear it a lot. The epiglottis can be involved as well. And rather than pushing, although we certainly are going to lean on the gas a little bit with our abdominal muscles, holding those ribs out, it's more about relaxing and letting more air through so that the vocal folds naturally move away. Like if I take this sound here, and I'm actually going to drop my desk here a little bit so you can kind of see what I mean. Oh. So you're gonna see my abdominal muscles working. So I'm gonna let you see the way that I breathe in, see the different things that go on, and then you're gonna see my abdominals working, and that motion is gonna be what takes the effort off of my neck, right? So that I'm not bearing down. Because if you squeeze on this, let me tell you, it does not feel good. If you have any tension in your throat, it does not feel good. So here we go. Breathe in. So I've expanded. Notice how I expand out and down. So there's my ribs going out. My abdominal muscles are opening up. I'm kind of a bigger dude, so it can be a little hard to see sometimes. So here we go. There's that expansion. I'm only thinking about getting to like 75% full. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to transition that sound. So let me take it slow. Did you see the obliques kind of squeeze in here? That is imperative, and that's the reason why I can come back from that sound, which is like this really guttural, clacky, to the outside observer, painful sound, and have no discomfort at all. When I do this, I'm focused on a very frontal resonant space. If I was to use my true voice, it would sound like this. My favorite vocalist of all time, Travis Ryan, he straight up just does this. Like he just does that, and I think it sounds amazing, actually. I have some thoughts about his mids, but I want to hear a little bit more of the song. And those high those high vocals he was doing, just like really clean, really balanced fry tone. Loved it. But let's keep going. Let's keep going. Cool. I like how their drummer, oh, what a cool screenshot. It's too bad the video is so dark. That'd be good for the thumbnail. I like how their drummer really guided the song back and forth between like bouncy groove and then like just super powerful blast beats. I really like that. So a couple things that I really like with his low vocals. I'm like really keyed in on his low vocals. With his low vocals, he's doing a lot of like, right? And that's the sort of thing like, obviously, like, so there's this technique called yarling that's not going to be for us, but it's kind of like a not stereotypical, but it's like a signature sound of like a lot of like rock music in the early 2000s. Well, I just heard the news today with arms wide open, like that, we're under the sunlight. That's yarling. So this, in my opinion, sounds a lot cooler than yarling, but there's this like, if I was to take like one sound and describe a lot of bands like Creed, Godsmack, things like that, I would go, that would be the sound, right? Now, this sounds nothing like yarling at all. It's not the same technique, but I want to draw a parallel to how all sorts of genres have like sort of their packaged identifying sounds, right? And for a lot of like death metal and deathcore, I don't hear this as much as I used to. It's hear how that I kind of has like, it's not a pig squeal, but it has kind of like that sort of like that pig sound, like. And essentially what we're doing is we're just creating a big cavern in our mouth, and then closing our jaw and letting a little bit of an E vowel come through. Oi, oi, boy, oi, say, oi, oi, boy, oi, dee. And that's basically kind of how that goes. Now, for his mids, it sounds like, and I found a clip of him doing this, it sounds like he's taking this sound and letting it ride upwards. I will say that that's a really hard sound to turn into a fry scream, high scream, which is probably why he leans on a fry tone in order to get his highs. Because if I take like this down here and I try to lift it up, everything compresses and it's kind of lost. You can get up to a mid, and a lot of that is going to be, the position of your mouth and the position of your tongue, as well as the way that you're aiming your voice. So with a low, I'm kind of aiming towards my lips in the front. With a mid, I'm aiming more towards like my upper lip, maybe like my cheekbones even. So I'm here. And we can let a little fry influence in there for sure, because they're separate mechanisms, but it's the same thing. Sometimes people will mistake that for a fry tone. I will admit they do sound very similar, but if I take that scream and I peel it back, I reduce it to its most basic parts, you're going to hear that my vocal folds aren't involved at all. I don't have that sort of TV static sound that we get with the fry scream. I'll show you. So I'm here. What's happened there is my vocal folds haven't taken over the distortion and started crackling. They've relaxed and moved away from the center line. There's no medial tension there. There's no connection at all. I'm just holding back a little bit of the airflow. Let's keep going though. We'll talk about his other screams in a minute. I also like that really that small like little narration he did. I want to hear it again. It sounded like just some sort of gritty, breathy talking. Nothing like specifically like that we could like zero in on, but it sounded really, really cool. So if he does it again, we'll talk about it. But let's keep going. That was it. That was it right there. I didn't go back far enough. I'm sorry. I'll cut that part out of the video. Or maybe I'll leave it. I don't care. Yeah, so you can see him. I'm trying to catch that screenshot, but it might just be... There we go. You can see him. Now, as with all music videos, we don't know if he was lip syncing or actually doing the screams along with the video. Some people lip sync, some people do the scream. It really just depends. But you're obviously not hearing what they were playing live in that setting, right? But you can hear that like that's similar. You can hear that sort of balance between that crackle and that airflow. Super cool stuff. Let's keep going. Oh. I feel like if you could capture the sound of like a rotting swamp, like for anybody who's played Elden Ring, like Caelid, if I'm pronouncing that right, that like blight swamp. It's been a while since I played it, so I don't remember. I put like over 100 hours in that game. Those are noob numbers. Get those numbers up. I feel like that would be a really good like sound to sort of like if you were to have like a spirit of the swamp, I feel like it would sound like that. Now, we heard a lot of vocal layers going on there as well, but they were all interplaying very, very nicely. And the dominant sound was a really balanced, nice fry tone. Now, it's pretty cool that he's this good at them, because for a lot of people, if they are doing one technique, the other is really hard for them. So if they're really good fry vocalists, they're going to have some difficulty. Not guaranteed. A lot of people can do both. It's just a trend that you see sometimes that, if somebody's really good at fry vocals, they're going to have a hard time with false chord. Or if they're really good at false chord, they're going to have a hard time with fry vocals, right? And it can be, I have noticed that it can be a bit of a longer road for people to learn fry. I always say that when you're learning fry screams, there are a couple of things that can set you up for success. Number one, don't give a shit about volume for a while. Like, do not care about volume. And also just get comfortable utilizing fry in your speaking voice, right? The fact of the matter is, I have met some people that they get fry figured out in like 5 days. And I've met other people who fry took them like 6-7 months, right? So getting comfortable with your fry and your speaking tone would kind of be around here, just like, hey, that's it. Now, that does not sound like the scream at all. And in actuality, that's not really the sound that we're going to use for the scream, but it gets you used to the behavior of the vocal folds popping and letting a little bit more air through. There being a slightly more open, slightly longer open phase of the vocal folds. They're popping open, right there. Now, for it to become a fry scream, we do need a little bit more medial tension. We do need the vocal folds engaging a little bit more. That doesn't mean it's a lot, right? One of the best ways that we can think about this is by the fry being a slightly higher pitch. Because when we raise our voice, our vocal folds are lengthening and shortening and becoming thinner or fatter. So a low tone is, short, fat vocal folds, and a higher pitch, especially like a sort of really breathy head voice sound, right? That's going to be longer, thinner vocal folds, right? So a lot of times you'll see people suggesting, and these are good suggestions, trying to find your fry at your vocal break. So what you can do is you can just start really breathy. And you can get just like that baseline crackly sound going on. Other times you'll hear suggestions where people will say, take a low tone, and sort of raise it up a little bit. You can pair it with words to make that a little bit easier. Sing, like using a pitch to carry it up. And then you start to get that little crackle. That's a good enough sound for you to focus on for a long time. I don't do a whole, I'll be real, I don't do a whole lot of fry screams myself, because up until I started Carter Vox Academy, I was too lazy to give them any time. I was like, this is not the mindset that I think you should have, or if you do have it, like, actually, that's fine too. But my whole thing is like, why do fry when I could just grunt, or I could just, take a false chord, lift it, right, and do that. Oh, I just unplugged my headphones. So, it's kind of up to you how you want to go about it. And I'm a big believer in follow what's natural, right? If you really want to learn false chord and it is just impossible with where you're at in your life, maybe you just aren't very dexterous isn't the right word, but you just have sort of like a locked up super glottal space. You just can't even get this to go. Rather than force it, focus on this. Just focus on that sound for a while and see where that takes you. Anyways, I talked for a long time, but I don't know. It's cool stuff. I like this stuff. Let's keep going. Oh. One thing he's doing that I also am a big fan of is that he's changing from mids to lows predominantly, not entirely, but predominantly with his vowel shape. Also, again, shout out to the drummer. I don't know anything about drumming. If I sat down on a drum kit, I would get lost. I wouldn't know what I was doing. But I love how some of those fills came in a bit delayed. I expected them, pop, and then they came in a little bit after that. That was really solid. So a lot of the way that he's getting those mid and low tones down, right? And a lot of the way that he's doing that is he has, again, that bass line tone, right? And he's modulating the vowel. So if I was to go from like, you could hear those mouth movements. Again, I'm not going to use my vocal folds to do that. But if I use those mouth movements, that vocal the posture of my vocal tract, right? I don't have to change the distortion, and therefore, like, you could call it different techniques or not. It doesn't really matter to me. I kind of, just the way that my brain thinks about it is it's one technique, which I call, a more arytenoidal focus sound. Most people lump it under false chord. That's fine. I got no problem with it. But I think of it as more of like, just like an arytenoidal scream. And I am just augmenting that technique. Right. And the reason I think of it that way is because if I was to, be here, hey, like I didn't really use two different techniques per se. It's still true chord phonation. I'm sure that, people from the classical singing world might have something to say about that. I don't know. This is just how I think of it. And I think it can be a really easy way for metal vocalists to think about it as well, because sometimes I'll get a student in who's got a little bit of experience, maybe like 6 months to a year, and they're very confused because they think each sound is literally like its own silo of a vocal. It exists independently of any other vocal style. I see that a lot. I was really surprised how much I saw that when I started vocal coaching 4 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, however long. I don't know. I had a terrible memory. But yeah, a lot of times people would be like, I would be in a lesson with somebody and, they'd want to learn a high scream, and so we'd work on high screams. Like we'd work on those screams, right? And then they'd be like, okay, so I can do this. That's awesome. I really want to learn how to do like that chewier vocal. What type of distortion do I need to make? And I'd be like, well, what do you mean? And they'd be like, that sound of like, well, they wouldn't do that, but they'd show me a band or something. I'd be like, oh, it's the same sound. You're just going, you're just showing your teeth and keeping your vocal tract small, right? Versus, anyways, I don't know. I'm just kind of rambling at this point, but he's very good at using his vowels to drive the vocal style and then only shifting into new styles when he has to. I'm going to start another tangent, so I'm just going to shut up and keep going. But good vocals. TLDR, good vocals. Oh. That was dope. That was good. Let's hear part of that again. I wanted to point out some things he did. Let's go like right there. Right there. That's that vowel shift I'm talking about. He had kind of a more open. He pushed his lips out. Right? And when you're doing these techniques, properly, they're like, it's kind of surprising how comfortable they are despite their sound. Like I describe to my students sometimes, learning metal vocals is like taking an extremely difficult hike, and then at the top of the peak finding like the most comfortable like lounge you've ever been in your life. There's like a couch and a jacuzzi, and you know, you can just sit there and be like and there's no difficulty or pain involved at all, which is really cool when you're doing it right. So good work there. I'm loving the vocal layers. I mentioned this in the video I did about Chelsea Grin, Origin of Sin, just recently, and I feel like, you know, he and Tom Barber to me sound very, very different, but they're using their their layers in kind of a similar way. Like, it's not just let me put as many freaking layers here as I absolutely can to sound like an absolute monster. It's like, okay, so I want this to be driven by a mid scream, so I'm going to build around that, let a really crackly layer, give it some, you know, sludgy, you know, sharpness. That doesn't make sense, sludgy sharpness, but you get what I'm saying. On top of it, very, very cool. I wanted to show you, I just remembered, I wanted to show you that video of the mid that I mentioned. So this is a lot more recent, obviously. Well, I don't remember when it came out, but listen here, you can kind of hear him do this with his mid. Let's check it out.
Cool. Yep.
So that's a much more loose one, actually. So we can, with this, we can sort of add a little bit of strategic, I don't like the word constriction, activation, let's say. Strategic activation to get it a little bit more like driven and focused, which would sound like this. Or we can loosen up and let more air through, and it sounds more like this. You can kind of hear that here. I didn't notice that the first time through, but that's really cool.
Yep.
He's even breathier than me. Yeah, right about there. He's letting his cheeks puff a little bit. That's pretty dope. I like that.
Cool.
I thought this was where the mid was. Sorry, y'all. I think it's... Oh, here it is. Maybe I'm freaking crazy. Let me find it. There it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Just so that way it's like a ramp.
You can kind of hear him lift it up right there.
That way it's like a ramp.
Now, just for anybody watching, I'm not trying to sound like him or like mimic him completely. I'm actually, normally this is the part that if I do a reaction video, I cut out, but I just am kind of in the mood to leave it in. I'm just playing around with the way he's doing things to feel it for myself. I'm not trying to be like, look at me, I'm just as good as Adam Mercer, bro. Because sometimes people get a little irritated when I try to match the sound and they're like, there's no way you can be this vocalist. And I'm like, I don't know where your insecurities lie, but leave them, keep them for yourself. I don't need them. But you can hear that, and that's a really cool sound. I really like that. Anyways, let's get back here, finish the song out, and that'll be enough. This is a longer one, 34 minutes. Holy cannoli. Super cool. Super cool. I think it's just ambience the rest of the way. It's nice though. All right, cool. So that was Wake in Providence, the horror of the old gods. One last thing I want to mention, because a lot of the stuff I talked about today is not necessarily where I think brand new vocalists should start. That's just my opinion. Those are my thoughts. One way that you can kind of gauge your technique. Now, this is not, if you feel like you have any issues with your voice, you should see an ENT or, you know, some sort of voice doctor, voice therapist, speech therapist. But, you know, it's also good for us as vocalists to have little tiny tools to check. And a very simple one is to see if your voice can connect on high notes, like a high, really breathy, like bad falsetto, like, ooh. If your vocal folds can't connect and it sounds more like this, I'm going to simulate it. I'm going to do it on purpose. That means your vocal folds are swollen and you're putting effort on there that you don't need to. And the reason that we want to do that high, the reason we want to do that high space is because your vocal folds, they kind of close and open like this. And by keeping it really quiet and really breathy, we can see if they're having difficulty closing at all. You know, if we're really loud, hey, we can kind of hide behind pressure and volume. So that's something to think about. Anyways, this was kind of a rambly video, but it was a really fun one to make. So I think we're going to wrap it up there. Good job to the guys in A Wake In Providence. Appreciate you making good music. That's all I have. If you enjoyed the content, like, share, and subscribe. It means a lot to this old man. And with that said, I gotta pee, so I'm out of here. Many thanks, much love, I'm out.